Okay guys, so we're kicking off our unit on organic molecules. The first component of that unit that we're going to go over is carbohydrates. The other organic molecules we're going to touch on or go over are lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Before we do any of that, we have to talk about organic molecules in general. So an organic molecule is any molecule that contains carbon. Those are called organic molecules, and they account for 90% of all known compounds. And why is that? So if you think back to your days of 8th grade science or wherever you touched upon the periodic table, if we notice where carbon is on there, it's in the carbon family. And what do we know about that? Think. So, carbon can form covalent bonds with 4 other elements because it has 4 valence electrons, right? Because of the family it's in. So that is why it accounts for so many different molecules. Okay, so before we continue with carbohydrates, there's some vocabulary that you're going to need to understand before we go further. So molecular formula. This formula is going to tell us the actual number of atoms of each element in the molecule. Empirical formula, which is the lowest whole number ratio of atoms within that molecule. And the structural formula is how those atoms in a molecule are arranged. So let's look at glucose, for example. The molecular formula of glucose is C6H12O6. That's telling you the number of atoms of those elements in that molecule. There's 6 atoms of carbon, 12 atoms of hydrogen, and 6 atoms of oxygen. The empirical formula for that would be CH2O. The lowest whole number ratio. How those atoms are arranged, the structural formula, would be whether it's, for example, a straight chain or it's a ring structure. Okay. Isomers. Isomers are molecules that have the same molecular formula but a different structural formula. This is going to tell you that they have different properties. Okay, so polymers. Polymers are large molecules that form when a bunch of small molecules come together. We call those monomers. Poly means many, and mono is one. Okay, so now we're going to continue with carbohydrates. So they're composed of atoms of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. They can be in a chain, branch, or ring structure. They're called saccharides, which means sugar. And as you see, most of them end in ose. There's probably some that you have already heard of. And then the 3 types of carbohydrates we are going to study are monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides. Monosaccharides, also called simple sugars or single sugars, and they're basically the subunit of all carbohydrates. And the 3 important monosaccharides that you are going to have to know throughout this unit are glucose, C6H12O6 that we've already discussed, grape sugar, galactose, C6H12O6 or milk sugar, and fructose, C6H12O6, which is a fruit sugar. These 3 molecules above are isomers. So take a second, think back to what an isomer is further in your notes, and think to yourself why those are isomers. So looking back, you should have been able to figure out that these 3 monosaccharides have the same molecular formula. They're all C6H12O6. But saying that they're isomers tells you that they're going to have a different structural formula. So as you see here, we have glucose, fructose, and galactose in their straight chain form. Listen closely. You do not need to know the straight chain form of these monosaccharides. I have this slide here. I'm just showing you that their structure is different, right? But their molecular formula is the same, C6H12O6. Again, you do not need to know the straight chain form of these monosaccharides. So these are these monosaccharides in their ring structure form. These you will have to be able to identify. And there is a pretty simple way that we are going to explain that to you, that you'll be able to quickly identify what the monosaccharides are. Okay, so you are going to be responsible for identifying glucose, fructose, and galactose. So, the first thing I'm going to explain to you guys that you all will quickly be able to identify is fructose here. Fructose, as it begins with F, you'll remember it has 5 sides to it. It is a 5-sided sugar, right? It's a pentagon shape. Fructose, 5 sides. Okay. As we get over to glucose and galactose, you're looking at those like, oh my gosh, what is going on? Those look very similar. I'm going to show you a way that you will easily identify. So when you're looking to decipher whether it's glucose or galactose, you are going to look on the left-hand side of the molecules. And you are looking for the OH group. When you look at this OH group, it is down below. It is glued down. The OH group is glued down, telling you it is glucose. When we look over at galactose, the OH group is up high. It's like it's up in the galaxy. Galactose. All right, so a quick recap on that. Fructose, 5-sided sugar, fructose 5. That will easily be identified. Glucose, again, the OH group, or we also call that a hydroxyl group, is down. It's glued down, glucose. Our OH on this left side is up. It's in the galaxy, galactose. Okay? And again, you will be responsible for identifying those and writing. All right, so looking at these two molecules, if you just follow the simple explanation on how to tell which is which, look at the left side molecule and think to yourself what that must be. If you say glucose, you're right. If you look at the right molecule and you look at that hydroxyl or OH group on the left side where it is, right, it is up in the galaxy. We call it galactose. Okay, so that is it for monosaccharides. I know it's a lot of information. Some of you probably have it down. We will explain something to you in class. It's kind of going to take it a step further. It'll be an extra credit thing, so if you're feeling like you don't want to worry about that, not a problem, but we'll do that in class next time we see you. So now we're moving on to disaccharides. If you look at the prefix there, also called double sugars. When two monosaccharides connect through a process called dehydration synthesis, a process that we're going to explore a little deeper, we have another video that explains exactly how that process takes place. So dehydration synthesis, it's a process by which 2 or more molecules are combined by the removal of water. Okay, so 3 important disaccharides that you are responsible for knowing. We have maltose, which is a glucose plus a glucose. sucrose, which is a glucose plus a fructose, and lactose, which is a glucose plus a galactose. What is the molecular formula of a disaccharide? So what I want you guys to do is find out, whether it's through your own thinking, which I know many of you will be able to do, or any other way you can come up with the molecular formula of a disaccharide. Write that down and turn that into us tomorrow for extra credit points. So here we have pictures of those disaccharides: sucrose, lactose, and maltose. So if you look, and as a reminder, because these are things that you'll be studying over and remembering, sucrose, glucose, and fructose. Lactose is glucose and galactose, and maltose, glucose and glucose. So polysaccharides, also called complex carbohydrates. It's many simple sugars bonded together through dehydration synthesis. And the three important polysaccharides that you are going to be responsible for knowing are starch, glycogen, and cellulose. So their molecular formula is going to depend on how many carbons are in that chain. So if you look at these polysaccharides, cellulose you see is a straight chain, glycogen is highly branched, and then starch has a slight branching to it. And this is just an image here showing you all those different organic molecules and where they branch off to. And at the end of this unit, it's all going to come together, and you'll see. You guys will actually be knowing all of these